Welcome to the Marriage Boss Podcast. Today I'm super excited about our special guest because she is like the female mirror to me. I love her work, and her message is so clear and so needed in our noisy world where it seems that everyone is in overdrive. Couples are finding it harder and harder to communicate with each passing day, and it feels like we're all becoming more disconnected. Her talk today, Cracking the Code of Love, the science behind what we need to get love right. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Jenev Caddell. Dr. Jenev Caddell is a relationship coach and clinical psychologist who helps entrepreneurs and their partners communicate better, understand each other, and be happy together. She sees her work at the corner where the cutting-edge new science behind love meets business. Jenev understands that when we are stronger in love, we can do everything better. She believes that entrepreneurs are responsible for changing the world, and with rock-solid relationships, they can do this even more effectively. Jenev is the author of Your Best Love, the couple's workbook and guide to their best relationship, and she's the founder of www.mybestrelationship.com. Please join me in giving a big Marriage Boss welcome to Dr. Jenev Caddell.
Thank you, Rick. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you.
So much.
I've been looking forward to this, and I'm really so excited to have you here. Before we jump in, I wanted to ask you, I know we're going to talk about cracking the code of love, but I wanted to ask you, is there a book that you're reading right now that you're really burning on, or that you have read over the past few months that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, well, I actually read it about this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier in the year, as soon as it got released. And okay. I think it's such a relevant, it's basically the basis for what I do here. And the book is called Love Sense, The Revolutionary New Science of Romantic Relationships by Dr. Sue Johnson.
Wow.
And it's really, we're going to talk about cracking the code to love today. And it's really based on this work, this body of research and work that Sue has done that really has fueled a lot of my work. And so for those of you who love what you hear, you've got to run out and check out, even if you don't like what you hear, you got to run out and check out this book because it's phenomenal. It's interesting. It's funny. It's a page turner, but it's also just got so much research in it that just shows how to get love right. And so I would strongly recommend it. I know you've read it. So.
She's great, yeah, and I want to get love right too, so I know that our audience does. So
yeah,
that's
we all do.
That's a terrific topic.
Yes.
Awesome, cool. So tell me, let's just jump right in. Tell us about this science behind love.
Okay, well, it really, was introduced to me by Sue Johnson, and she's really at the forefront of this kind of revolution of scientifically understanding love and what it is. And it's really been in only the last 15, 20 years or so that people have kind of gotten a clue about what really love is all about. Mm-hmm. You hear about it as this mystery or this tragedy or, something we fall into or a spell that we get caught in, right? It's been always kind of like this mysterious thing. But what Sue has done is, studied tons of couples over the years and has recognized that what love really is an emotional bond that's shared between two people.
Okay. And
it goes beyond that, though, because what's happening now is that all of the brain science and, the technology is actually catching up to some of the things that she's noticed with couples that can actually demonstrate when, like the fMRI machine that looks into the brain can actually shows how our brains are really wired to connect with each other.
Wow. And
so love is really this survival code that's kind of wired into our mammalian brains. Mm-hmm. And so so that's kind of, a very brief thumbnail about what this science of love is all about. It's an ancient survival code that makes us feel safe in a world that's unpredictable, sometimes traumatic. It literally is good for us. It soothes our nervous systems. It makes us healthier. And it's really, an emotional bond that people have with each other. That's how it's kind of when it's at its strongest.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, as you're mentioning this, I'm thinking about my emotions and how love feels when it's working and also how emotional it is when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us more about this emotional bond and what you mean by that?
Sure. Well, perhaps anybody who's been in a when it's not working knows what it feels like when love isn't working, and it is an emotional experience, but one that feels paramount to survival, right? Life or death. So couples who aren't connecting in this way, who do not have this emotional bond, when they can't connect with each other, when they can't reach each other, they talk about this as with like life and death metaphors, right? Like I'm drowning,
definitely
falling off a cliff. It's like, it's the neuroscientists call it a primal panic that your brain goes into when you're not connecting, when you don't have this emotional bond.
Yeah.
So what the emotional bond really is, I know I keep saying emotional bond, and the question is, what is this emotional bond? It's really a sense of safety, a sense of connection, a sense of being important to somebody, being a priority, a sense of being cherished, a sense of feeling understood, seen, heard, like a priority, and feeling, really it's about emotional safety. Like you can just be yourself, all warts and all, and you're going to still be accepted by this person and cherished. Yeah. So that's really what it's about. It's about a sense of safety and connection.
And tell me, you know, when you talk about these connections and safety, and what's coming up for me is that there's probably some kind of a maintenance involved in this, and care. And so how do we care for these bonds in our relationships?
Oh, it's such a good question, because I think this is where so many people fall short, because it's something that they take for granted, right? And so obviously, you know, time needs to be spent together, and really being emotionally present with each other is really important. And so a key way of really taking care of these bonds is something that, you know, Sue writes about in a different book called Hold Me Tight, another one I would really recommend. Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love by Dr. Sue Johnson. She really makes it very, very simple about how to take care of these bonds. And so I'll share with your audience, you know, it comes down to a simple acronym that everybody can remember, ARE.
I'm going to take some notes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
ARE, and basically what ARE stands for is like a conglomeration of things that partners need to be with each other to take care of these emotional bonds.
Okay.
And it's interesting, you can remember the ARE, because when couples get into fights and they're not really taking care of those bonds, or things are going the wrong way, people are not arguing about, you know, whatever you think you're arguing about, whether it's the dishes or the laundry or, you know, the mother-in-law or the money even, right?
Yeah.
What people are arguing about is the question, are you there for me? Yep. Right? Always goes back to that sense of like, am I seen, heard, prioritized, important to you? Is that emotional bond there? Is it strong? And so the ARE, what that stands for, the $1 million question, right, is 3 things, all about A, which is accessibility.
Okay.
And you want to be, so what that means is you want to be accessible to your partner. You want to be able to be available and reachable, right? So I know you and I, we both work with entrepreneurs, and as entrepreneurs, we both know sometimes, you know, whatever project we're working on might feel like it takes precedence over our partners, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the message then can become, oh, this is much more important to me than you. Yeah. Which we want to avoid. We want to be accessible. We want to be, you know, show our partners that, you know, we're there for them.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean you have to like stop everything and just be like, I'm at your attention, right? But it does mean communicating, like, hey, you're important to me in however way you want to say that. Hey, I know that this is important for you to talk about. I got to tie this up in the next 10 minutes and then I'll be totally accessible to you. So it's about being clear about that.
Yep.
So really being open and accessible and available to each other. Now, the next letter is very similar, and it's being responsive. We all need that as well, right? We need to be to let our partners know that, you know, they matter, and we do that by responding to them. I know it sounds so simple and obvious, but it's also very apparent how many of us get that wrong too.
Well, and if you go into any living room today, or any diner, or, you know, even a classroom, you'll see a bunch of people who are not responsive because they're either thinking about something else, looking down at a screen or a smartphone. And, you know, I mean, I can tell you, anytime you walk into my living room, if the 4 of us are in there, we all have a screen in our hand or next to us, and then there's a big one in the middle of the room.
It's so true.
So, and that helps us to not be responsive sometimes.
Absolutely.
So I can tell you, yeah, it is a very tough thing to do.
Absolutely. You know, this is going off topic a little bit, but somebody was telling me once about a bar in New York City that has like coasters for your drinks with like a special, I haven't seen it, but there's like a special holder in the coaster for your phone.
Oh man.
It's just crazy, right? I was like, wow,
yeah.
I haven't been out in a long enough time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, being responsive is so important. And, you know, I hear it all the time with my clients who are, you know, consumed by Facebook, social media, doing what they need to do for their business and connecting and networking. It's all online. And yet, you know, there's this partner sitting next to them like, hey, hello, me too, right? But
yeah.
what usually happens is that person will turn to something else as well, their phone, their know, TV show, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so responsiveness is so important. And it's really, you know, they did a terrible experiment that I think is worth talking about called the still face experiment. Mm-hmm. So if you guys want to see it, you can, you know, check it out on YouTube, the still face experiment, which involves, you know, a child, you know, baby, 1 year old or so, and a mother, and they're kind of in this, you know, beautiful dynamic of like cooing at each other, and they're all in synchronized, and it's all well and good, and the kids laughs and the mother laughs and all that, and the mom's emotionally responsive. And when her face goes still, which is what happens, and she kind of goes dead inside and stops emotionally responding, the kid has a total meltdown. Wow. The kid goes haywire because his whole world is wrapped up in that mother's face. Wow. And her responsiveness, her emotional responsiveness. So when that stops, when that gets cut off, it's like the oxygen supply goes dead, right? And so, you know, through Sue's work with couples, she's found, and we see it as well, I'm sure you see it, I see it with couples, when that happens, that same brain meltdown, primal panic happens even when we're adults. And so that's kind of like the revolution here, is that we have these same needs as children do. I mean, maybe not to the same extent, but on a neurological, biological level, we have that same need for that emotional connection. And so responsiveness is really, really important it's important to be responsive with your partner.
Yeah, I mean, you're just, you know, I feel that in my heart when you're talking about that example. It's just, you know, hitting me right in the heart. That's just so hard. I mean, even now, I you know, if I'm not being responded to, I still feel like that. So it's, you know,
right,
never goes away.
Exactly. We need that, because what happens is when we don't get responded to, it's like our survival is threatened. We could die if we get cut off from the tribe. That's why abandonment and rejection are the two most like worst things that can happen to us. Wow. Because it's literally a survival wired in thing. It's not about being weak. It's not about being too needy. It's about being human. Yeah. So that's responsiveness. So we need that one, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then the last, A-R-E, accessibility, responsiveness, the last is engagement, emotional engagement. And obviously this is kind of like what we're talking about here. We need to be engaged with each other. And so that means that on a deeper level, you know, we all have very many layers of emotional experiences, and we need to kind of be open with each other on all of those levels. So couples get into trouble when they just kind of show each other the surface, right? Yeah, so somebody might be really, really angry, and the anger might be masking underlying pain. Yep. And without that sort of deeper emotional engagement, her partner might just see the anger and might like pull away when the pain is about wanting him to come closer. Right? So she winds up shooting herself in the foot, pushing him away, when she kind of, if she were just to be able to kind of be more authentic or more vulnerable emotionally and more emotionally engaged on that deeper level, they're going to have a much more stronger bond because he'll be drawn toward her more.
And, you know, I think about this anytime I have any kind of a challenge in any relationship, but certainly with Carol, my wife, if I only ask that one question sometimes, I might get just a surface. And then if I stay and ask the second question, or maybe, you know, I'm more available, more accessible, then I get, you know, either the truth or what's really happening, and it could be pain, it could be anger, it could be any kind of, most of the time, any kind of disagreement. I'm more wanting to talk about everything, and she's more wanting to like shut down about things. And so I have to stay to get past that layer. So I can tell you, in most relationships, it's like that. There's a top layer and another layer, and you just want to be available to get through that.
Totally. And what you're talking about too is slowing things down.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. So let me review now. I just want to go back over these 3 things just to kind of lock in. So the first step in caring for these bonds is A, be accessible. The second step is R, responsiveness, be responsive. And the third step is E, emotional engagement. So let's be accessible, let's be responsive, and let's engage emotionally so that we can care for these bonds. So is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll just revisit one thing really quickly, which was what you were just talking about, which is a very common pattern that couples get caught in. You were talking about with you and Carol, right? When she might want to not deal with something and you kind of want to talk about it more.
Yeah.
And I just want to really highlight what you do, because it's important, I think, for our listeners to really understand that if you can stay present with it and you can kind of slow things down yourself, it's really what's important to kind of give people the safety and the space to be able to kind of come forth with their stuff, right? Okay. Especially if there's someone who's more likely to kind of turn away. But what so often happens is that the person who wants to talk about stuff can become a bit of a nag with it and start to actually push the person more and more away. So for all you listeners, if you're the partner who likes to talk things out, who likes to think things through, take a softer approach, because that's going to give your partner more space to come forward with his or her stuff. So I love how you kind of brought that up. I thought it would be important to kind of underline and highlight. So that's one thing I want to share. Okay. But I do have one more piece of advice if we have time.
Yeah, sure.
All right, cool. This is actually something that I heard Jack Canfield talk about, that he does with his wife every week. And I think it's important for all of us to do this in our own relationships. If you think about, your work, you have meetings, you kind of look at things from an outside perspective, it's also really important to do that with your relationship. And so what he does is he and his wife set aside a time every week, and they talk and they say, hey, how are we doing this week? And they basically rate their relationship on a scale of 1 to 10. And now what's so cool about rating things on a scale of 1 to 10 is that it makes it something really, really subjective, a little bit more objective. Obviously, your rating is going to be subjective, but by using this common numerical language, it's kind of easier to sort of get the sense of where someone is. And so by saying, hey, where are we this week? And you each rate the marriage, it really sets up that, like I said, this common language, and you might be surprised with what you find. So, I might be at a 9 and my husband's at like a 2, and it's like, oh, wow, we actually have something important to talk about here. What's going on? So it's a really lovely springboard to kind of start to have these conversations, to start talking about what each of you needs to kind of get it to the next number, or to a 10, as Jack Canfield obviously does. Yep. Because it's sort of, it makes something that can be hard for couples to talk about who don't really have a language to do this. It makes it a lot easier. So cool. I wanted to give you the Jack Canfield tip of the week as well, because I think
that's awesome.
A worthwhile exercise.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Well, this was, I think you have a special gift for our audience, right?
Yes, I do. You're sharing my book with your audience. It's called Your Best Love, the couple's workbook and guide to their best relationship. It's largely based on Sue Johnson's work. So if you want a more in-depth experience, I would encourage you to run out to Barnes & Noble or Amazon or whatever and get Love Sense. But it's a nice, simple book that you can read and apply directly to your relationship using the worksheets and exercises as well.
Well, that's a nice bonus. Thank you. All right, and you can and that can be found at your, well, we're going to have it in the show notes, and it's also going to be on my website. But your website, and in case everybody wants to go and visit Jenev's website, it's mybestrelationship.com. So this was so much fun. I so appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. I'm so excited to be here with you, and had a great time as well.
Thanks, Jenev. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.